The massive chamber fell silent as Ambassador Sarah Chen stood from her seat at the Galactic Council table. Her blue uniform, bearing the simple emblem of Earth, seemed almost primitive compared to the elaborate robes and biomechanical suits worn by the other representatives. Around her, dozens of alien species watched with a mixture of confusion and dismissive amusement. "The Terran delegation withdraws from this council effective immediately," Sarah announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation matrix. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Chancellor Vexthara of the hegemony leaned forward, his crystalline features catching the chamber's artificial light. "Ambassador Chen, surely you jest. No species has ever voluntarily withdrawn from the council. The benefits of membership far outweigh any temporary disagreements." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "Benefits? You mean the privilege of watching while the hegemony strips mining rights from primitive worlds? The honor of contributing resources while having no real voice in decisions? The joy of seeing our trade routes reassigned to benefit your core worlds?" The Zephyrian representative, a being of shifting light patterns, flickered with what Sarah had learned to recognize as condescension. "The humans fail to understand galactic politics. Your species is young, impulsive. These decisions are made by those with centuries of experience governing star systems." "Experience in exploitation, you mean?" Sarah gathered her data tablets, each movement deliberate and final. "For 3 years, we've brought proposals to this council. Universal education initiatives, fair trade agreements, protection for developing species. Every single proposal has been voted down or altered beyond recognition." Around the chamber, alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. The human proposals had indeed been unusual, focusing on concepts that most galactic civilizations had abandoned long ago in favor of more practical concerns, like resource allocation and territorial expansion. Ambassador Ketvar of the Trade Federation, his insectoid features clicking in annoyance, spoke up. "The humans propose expensive idealism. The galaxy operates on established principles of hierarchy and efficiency. Strong species lead, weak species follow. This has maintained peace for millennia." "Peace built on the backs of enslaved worlds," Sarah countered. "We've seen your efficiency firsthand." The Cleary homeworld stripped bare for rare minerals. The Vith forced into labor contracts that amount to slavery. The systematic suppression of any species that dares to innovate beyond your approved limits. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, translation matrices struggling to keep up with the overlapping arguments. Some representatives seemed genuinely shocked by Sarah's accusations, while others displayed obvious guilt or anger. Chancellor Vexthara raised a crystalline hand for silence. "The human speaks of matters beyond their understanding. The Galactic Council has overseen unprecedented prosperity and expansion. Occasional sacrifices are necessary for the greater good." "Whose definition of greater good?" Sarah demanded. "Because it certainly isn't benefiting the majority of species under your rule." "We've run the numbers, Chancellor. 93% of Council resources flow to 12 core species. The remaining 7% is divided among over 400 member worlds." The mathematical precision of her statement created an uncomfortable silence. Most species had accepted the disparity without question, assuming it was natural order rather than deliberate policy. Senator Thiss of the Dominion, a reptilian being known for his calculating nature, spoke carefully. "Even if the human statistics are accurate, what alternative do they propose? Chaos? Anarchy? Without central authority, the galaxy would tear itself apart in resource wars." Sarah smiled, and something in that expression made several aliens unconsciously step back. "That's where you're wrong, Senator. You assume that your way is the only way because it's the only way you've ever known. But humans have a different perspective on cooperation and progress." She activated her personal communicator, and holographic images appeared above the council table. The images showed Earth's solar system, but not as the council members had seen it in their files. Instead of a single habitable world with some asteroid mining, they saw a thriving network of orbital habitats, terraformed moons, and massive space installations. "This is what humanity has accomplished in the 3 years since joining your council," Sarah announced. "While you were debating our proposals and denying our request for expanded territory, we were building. Every human colony world has tripled its population and industrial output. We've developed new faster-than-light communication methods that make your quantum networks look like signal fires." The images shifted to show massive starships, clearly of human design, but incorporating technologies that many council species believed were theoretical impossibilities. Ships that seemed to bend space around them, installations that generated energy from seemingly empty space, automated systems that defied understanding. Chancellor Vexithara's crystalline features darkened. "Impossible. The Council strictly regulates technological development. No member species may advance beyond approved parameters without oversight." "We know about your regulations," Sarah replied coldly. "That's exactly why we're leaving. You see, Chancellor, you made a fundamental error when you first evaluated humanity. You assumed we would follow your rules." The Zephyrian representative's light patterns shifted to angry red. "All species must follow Council regulations. It is the foundation of galactic stability. For species that depend on your approval, perhaps. But humanity has always had a problem with authority we don't respect." Sarah's smile grew wider. "Did you really think we would submit our greatest minds to your oversight? That we would limit our growth to accommodate your quota systems?" She gestured to the holographic displays. "Every breakthrough you see here was developed in secret facilities you didn't know existed. Every innovation was tested and implemented while your inspectors were examining our approved research stations. We've been preparing for this day since our 2nd month in this council." The chamber erupted again, this time in genuine alarm. Several representatives were frantically accessing their own data networks, trying to verify the scope of human technological advancement. Ambassador Ketvar's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. "This is a violation of every treaty, every agreement. The humans have committed acts of deception on a galactic scale." "Have we?" Sarah challenged. "Show me the treaty provision that forbids independent research. Quote me the agreement that requires full disclosure of all technological developments." "You can't, because they don't exist. Your regulations were always enforced through economic pressure and implied threats, never through actual legal frameworks." She paused, letting that sink in. "You controlled technology by controlling resources and access to markets. But humans excel at finding alternative solutions to resource problems." The holographic display shifted again, showing massive asteroid mining operations and energy collection arrays that dwarfed anything in council space. "We don't need your trade networks anymore, Chancellor. We don't need your protection or your markets, and we certainly don't need your permission." Senator Thies leaned forward, his reptilian features sharp with concern. "The humans cannot simply withdraw from galactic civilization. The economic disruption alone would destabilize multiple sectors." "You're absolutely right," Sarah agreed cheerfully. "It will cause massive disruption. That's rather the point." She activated another display, this one showing trade flow analyses that made several aliens gasp in recognition. In the past year, human manufacturing has quietly become essential to 47 different supply chains across council space. Our agricultural exports feed 19 worlds. Our energy technology powers 16 major installations. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Without anyone realizing it, humanity had become integral to the galactic economy. "This is economic warfare," Chancellor Vexithara accused, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "This is free market capitalism," Sarah corrected. "Another human concept you might want to study. When you make better products at better prices, people buy them. When you offer better solutions to complex problems, people adopt them. We didn't force anyone to become dependent on human goods and services. You chose us because we were better." She began walking toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "Humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. All human-controlled facilities will cease operations for Council members. All trade agreements are void. All defense pacts are terminated." "You cannot do this!" The Hegemony Chancellor's crystalline form flared with angry light. "The stability of the galaxy depends on Council authority. Without it, there will be chaos, war, economic collapse." Sarah paused at the chamber door and looked back. "Perhaps. Or perhaps other species will discover what humans learned long ago. That cooperation works better when it's voluntary, and innovation flourishes when it's not shackled by bureaucracy." She smiled one last time. "Good luck governing a galaxy that no longer believes you're indispensable." As the chamber doors sealed behind her, Sarah Chen left behind a room full of aliens who had just realized their greatest fear, that humanity had never really needed them at all. In the days to come, they would learn exactly how much they had come to need humanity. The withdrawal had been swift and total. Within hours, human facilities across the galaxy went dark. Trade ships changed course mid-journey. Defense installations powered down. Communication networks that had quietly become dependent on human relay stations found themselves operating at a fraction of their normal capacity. The Galactic Council had spent centuries believing they controlled the galaxy through superior organization and established authority. They were about to discover what happened when a species that never really accepted that authority decided to leave. The crisis began within 72 hours of humanity's withdrawal. Admiral Zefcon stood in the command center of the Hegemony flagship, watching cascading system failures scroll across dozens of monitors. Each red warning light represented another critical breakdown in what had once been the galaxy's most sophisticated infrastructure network. "Report," he demanded, his crystalline features reflecting the chaos of the displays around him. Commander Yethak, her insectoid form clicking nervously, consulted her datapad. "Sir, 17 major trade routes have collapsed due to communication relay failures. The human-built quantum amplifiers were apparently critical to maintaining long-range coherence. Without them, our maximum reliable communication range has dropped to 12 light-years." Zefcon felt his internal crystal structure vibrate with stress. 12 light-years? Our empire spans 300. How are we supposed to coordinate anything across that distance? "That's not the worst of it, sir." Yethak's mandibles clicked faster. "The energy crisis is escalating. 41 worlds are reporting power grid failures. The fusion reactors are stable, but the distribution networks are failing. Apparently, human efficiency improvements were integrated into our power systems at such a fundamental level that removing them causes cascade failures." The Admiral moved to the tactical display, watching as entire star systems flickered from green to yellow to red. "How is this possible? Our technology worked fine before the humans arrived." "Yes, sir, but that was before the upgrades. Over the past 3 years, human consultants integrated their improvements into our existing systems. They claimed it was routine optimization, increasing efficiency by 30 to 40% while reducing maintenance costs. Our engineers approved every modification." Zefcon's crystalline form pulsed with frustrated energy. "You mean they sabotaged our systems?" "No, sir. That's the problem. The modifications genuinely improved performance, but they created dependencies. The improved systems require specific components and processes that only humans understood completely. Our engineers learned to operate the new systems, but not to maintain or replicate them independently." Before the Admiral could respond, another officer rushed up with urgent news. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the Outer Rim territories. The Corvin Rebellion has spread to 6 systems. Without the human defense platforms, Our response capabilities are severely limited. Zephcon pulled up the tactical display for the outer rim. What he saw made his crystal structure dim with worry. Red zones marked open rebellion, yellow areas showed unrest, and even the green zones looked precarious. The Corvins were always troublemakers, he muttered. Why are they acting now? Intelligence suggests they've been in contact with human representatives, sir. Not official diplomats, but independent traders and advisors. The rebels seem to have acquired new weapons and defensive technologies. The admiral stared at the display in growing comprehension. They're giving military technology to rebels? Not exactly, sir. Human civilian technology is apparently adaptable for military purposes in ways we never anticipated. Standard human mining equipment can be modified into effective siege weapons. Their communication devices can coordinate attacks across multiple light years. Even their agricultural drones can be reprogrammed for reconnaissance and harassment missions. On the other side of the galaxy, Trade Federation President Ketvar faced his own escalating disaster. His mandibles clicked in agitation as he reviewed economic reports that painted an increasingly dire picture. The textile industry has completely collapsed, his economic advisor reported. Human synthetic fabrics were so superior and cost-effective that most production shifted to their facilities. Now those facilities are closed, and we lack both the materials and the technical knowledge to restart our own production. Ketvar gestured angrily with all four arms. Then restart the old production methods. We managed before the humans arrived. Sir, that's not possible. The old infrastructure was dismantled and sold for scrap when the human alternatives proved superior. It would take years to rebuild, and we no longer have workers trained in the old methods. The reports kept coming, each one worse than the last. Food shortages on 12 worlds where human agricultural techniques had tripled crop yields. Transportation breakdowns where human logistics algorithms had optimized shipping routes. Medical crises where human pharmaceutical research had provided breakthrough treatments for previously incurable diseases. How dependent did we become? Ketvar asked quietly. His advisor consulted multiple data pads before answering. In the 3 years since humans joined the Council, they became essential suppliers for 67% of our member worlds. More concerning, they provided technological solutions that our member species never fully understood or internalized. What do you mean? Human engineers didn't just sell us products, sir. They solved problems we'd accepted as unsolvable. Diseases we'd lived with for millennia. Technological limitations we'd assumed were natural laws. Social issues we'd considered inevitable, but their solutions required ongoing human involvement to maintain. On Thais Prime, Senator Thais faced a different but equally serious crisis. His reptilian features were drawn with exhaustion as he met with his Security Council. The independent worlds are declaring neutrality, his chief of staff reported. 17 systems have announced they're withdrawing from Council authority and establishing direct diplomatic relations with Earth. Thais hissed in frustration. On what grounds? They claim Council membership is no longer beneficial. Without human technological support, they argue that Council protection and trade benefits don't justify the taxes and regulations. Several worlds are pointing out that humans offered them better deals as independent partners than they ever received as Council members. The senator pulled up a galactic political map. The number of worlds marked as neutral or independent was growing hourly. This is exactly what we feared. The humans are destroying galactic unity. Sir, there's more. Intelligence reports suggest that human representatives are actively recruiting dissatisfied Council members. They're offering technological assistance, favorable trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. But only to worlds willing to declare independence from Council authority. Thais studied the map more carefully. A disturbing pattern was emerging. The worlds declaring independence weren't random. They formed strategic clusters that controlled key trade routes and resource nodes. They're fracturing our territory deliberately. Yes, sir. And they're doing it in a way that makes the new independent worlds naturally cooperative with each other and dependent on human support. It's like they're building a shadow empire without claiming sovereignty over anyone. Meanwhile, in the abandoned Galactic Council chamber, Chancellor Vex Thara met with emergency representatives from the 12 core species. The once impressive chamber now felt empty and cold, its vast size emphasizing how few remained in power. "Situation reports," he demanded. The representatives each delivered increasingly grim assessments. The hegemony was losing control of its outer territories. The Trade Federation faced economic collapse. The Dominion struggled with widespread civil unrest. Smaller member species were either declaring independence or requesting emergency assistance the Council could no longer provide. "How did this happen so quickly?" asked Ambassador Rethka of the Science Coalition. 3 days ago, we controlled a stable galactic government. Now we're watching civilization collapse." Chancellor Vexithara dimmed his crystalline form thoughtfully. "I've been reviewing our intelligence files on human history. I think we fundamentally misunderstood what kind of species we were dealing with." He activated a holographic display showing Earth's historical timeline. Humans have a pattern. When they encounter systems of authority they consider unjust or inefficient, they don't typically submit or rebel. They build alternatives. The display showed examples: parallel economic systems during colonial periods, underground networks during oppressive regimes, technological solutions that bypassed established institutions. "We thought we were managing their integration into our system," Vex Thara continued. "But they were never integrating. They were studying our weaknesses while building alternatives. Every cooperation was preparation for independence." Ambassador Ketvar clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "You're saying this withdrawal was planned from the beginning?" "I'm saying humans don't think like we do. We build hierarchies and assume others will accept their place within them. Humans build networks and assume others will choose to join if the benefits are genuine. They were never trying to climb our hierarchy. They were building a competing system." Senator Thiss leaned forward. "A system designed to make ours obsolete." "Exactly. And the terrifying part is that it's working. The worlds leaving us aren't joining a human empire. They're becoming part of a voluntary network where humans happen to be the most advanced and helpful partners." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Galactic Council had spent millennia believing that centralized authority was necessary for galactic stability. Humans had quietly demonstrated that voluntary cooperation could be more effective. "What are our options?" asked Ambassador Rethka finally. Chancellor Vexithara's form pulsed with frustrated energy. "Limited. We could attempt to force rebellious worlds back into compliance, but our military capabilities are compromised by the same dependencies that are crippling our civilian infrastructure. We could try to negotiate with human representatives, but they've made it clear they consider us irrelevant." "Or," prompted Senator Thiss, "or we accept that the galaxy has fundamentally changed and decide whether we want to be part of the new reality or continue trying to maintain the old one." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of an empire realizing its time might be ending. Outside the chamber, across the galaxy, the chaos continued to spread as species after species discovered how dependent they had become on the humans they had underestimated. In the void between stars, human ships moved with purposeful efficiency. They weren't conquering or destroying, they were simply filling the gaps left by failing council authority, offering alternatives to species ready to choose cooperation over submission. The galaxy was indeed descending into chaos, but from that chaos, something new was emerging. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy bore little resemblance to the ordered civilization the Galactic Council had once governed. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the human vessel Prometheus, watching through the view screen as her ship approached the Kepler station, once a minor trading post, now the hub of what many were calling the new galactic network. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" commented her first officer, Lieutenant Commander James Park. Through the transparent aluminum windows, they could see dozens of ships from species across the galaxy, many bearing the distinctive blue and silver insignia that marked members of the voluntary alliance that had emerged from the Council's collapse. "Hard to believe it used to be just a fuel depot," Elena agreed. "Population? Current estimates put it at 2.7 million beings from 43 different species, growing by about 50,000 per month. It's become the unofficial capital of the independent worlds." As their ship docked, Elena reflected on how much had changed. The Prometheus wasn't a military vessel, despite its advanced capabilities. In the new galaxy, the distinction between civilian and military technology had blurred considerably. Human innovation had made defensive systems so efficient that most trade ships could protect themselves, while cooperation networks had made large military forces largely unnecessary. The station's interior buzzed with activity that would have been impossible under Council regulation. Species that had been separated by bureaucratic barriers now worked side by side. A Corvin engineer collaborated with a Zephyrian physicist on energy efficiency improvements. Voith artists created works that incorporated human mathematical concepts with their traditional forms. Former Council species mingled freely with races that had never been permitted Council membership. Elena made her way to the central conference room, where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered. The meeting had no official name or authority. It was simply where people came to coordinate solutions to shared problems. "Captain Vasquez," greeted Dr. Yithek, a former Council scientist whose research had been stifled by regulations. "Perfect timing. We were just discussing the hegemony situation." Elena took a seat in the circle. Unlike Council chambers with their hierarchical arrangements, these meetings used simple circles where everyone had equal speaking rights. "What's the latest?" Ambassador Zara Min, a human diplomat who had helped coordinate the initial withdrawals, pulled up a holographic display. "The hegemony core worlds are stabilizing, but they've lost effective control over 70% of their former territory. Most of those worlds have joined regional cooperation networks." "And the crystalline leadership?" Elena asked. "Chancellor Vexithara requested a meeting. Apparently, they want to discuss terms for joining the network as equal partners rather than attempting to maintain their imperial structure." Dr. Yithek's translated voice carried notes of satisfaction. "It seems they've finally accepted that hierarchical control is less efficient than voluntary cooperation." "The data has been quite conclusive." Elena nodded. The data was indeed conclusive. In the 6 months since the Council's effective collapse, systems that had joined the voluntary network showed remarkable improvements. Economic growth had averaged 47% across member worlds. Technological advancement had accelerated dramatically without regulatory barriers. Most surprisingly, conflicts between species had decreased significantly. "What about military threats?" Elena asked. "Any holdout systems trying to maintain the old order through force?" Zara consulted her notes. 3 major incidents in the past month. The Dominion attempted to reclaim the Outer Rim territories by force. The rebel forces requested assistance, and 17 independent worlds responded with defensive support. The Dominion fleet withdrew after realizing they were outnumbered and outgunned. Outgunned by civilian vessels? "That's the beauty of distributed technology sharing," explained Dr. Yithek. "When every cargo ship can mount effective defensive systems and coordinate through instantaneous communication networks, traditional military advantages become meaningless. The rebels didn't need a navy. They had something better, a network of allies." Elena smiled. It was a perfect example of how human thinking had revolutionized galactic conflict resolution. Instead of building bigger guns, Humans had made guns unnecessary by making cooperation more attractive than conquest. "The second incident?" she prompted. "The Trade Federation tried to enforce their old monopoly agreements by blockading independent worlds. The blockade lasted exactly 4 days before member worlds offered alternative supply routes that were faster and cheaper than the old Federation networks. The Federation ships found themselves protecting empty space while trade flowed around them." The third incident, Zara explained, had been the most instructive. A former council species called the Vaktar had attempted to raid independent worlds for resources, expecting easy targets. Instead, they encountered coordinated defense networks that not only repelled the attacks, but offered the raiders better deals for peaceful trade than they could gain through conquest. "Half the Vaktar fleet switched sides mid-battle," Zara reported with amusement. "They're now working as independent security contractors for the same worlds they had intended to raid." Elena shook her head in wonder. "How are the former council leadership taking all this?" Dr. Yithek's form shifted in what Elena had learned was equivalent to a laugh. "With varying degrees of acceptance. Some, like Chancellor Vexithara, are adapting. Others are still convinced that chaos will somehow vindicate their old methods." As if summoned by their conversation, a communication screen activated showing Chancellor Vexithara himself. The crystalline being's form had changed since Elena had last seen him, less bright, more subdued, but somehow more genuine. "I hope I'm not interrupting," the Chancellor said, his translated voice carrying unusual humility. "Not at all," Zara replied diplomatically. "We were actually discussing your request for network membership." Vexithara's crystal structure pulsed thoughtfully. "I wanted to address your concerns directly. I understand that the hegemony's past actions have created mistrust. We accept full responsibility for our failures and the suffering we caused." Elena studied the former council leader carefully. "What's changed, Chancellor? 6 months ago, you were convinced that hierarchical control was the only path to galactic stability. 6 months ago, I believed that strength meant the ability to force compliance. I've learned that true strength means inspiring voluntary cooperation." Vexithara paused, his form dimming slightly. "The data is irrefutable. Network worlds show superior outcomes in every metric we once used to justify our authority. Economic prosperity, technological advancement, social stability, even cultural development. You've proven that our methods were not just morally questionable, but functionally inferior." Dr. Yithek leaned forward. "And your people? Are they prepared to participate as equals rather than rulers?" "That's been the most difficult adjustment," Vexithara admitted. "Many of my species struggle with the concept of influence through merit rather than position. But our younger generations have embraced the change. They see the opportunities that cooperation offers." Elena made a decision. "What specific commitments are you prepared to make?" "Complete transparency in all government operations, open access to our technology and research, gradual transition to democratic representation for all beings in our territory, regardless of species. Most importantly, formal renunciation of any claims to imperial authority." Zara and Dr. Yithek exchanged glances. The terms were more comprehensive than they had expected. "There's one more thing," Vexithara continued. "We want to contribute to the restoration project." "Restoration project?" Elena asked. "The worlds we damaged during our rule. The Cleary homeworld, the Vith colonies, dozens of others. We want to help restore what we destroyed using network principles of cooperative development." Elena felt a surge of hope. This was the transformation she had dreamed of when humanity first decided to walk away from the Council. "We'll need to consult with the affected worlds, but I think we can work something out." After the connection ended, the 3 representatives sat in contemplative silence for a moment. "It's remarkable," Dr. Yithek finally said. "A year ago, I would never have imagined the Chancellor of the Hegemony asking for permission to help repair the damage he had caused. That's the power of demonstrating alternatives, Zara observed. We didn't defeat the old system through force or argument. We simply showed that better options existed. Elena nodded. And now those alternatives are becoming the new normal. Through the conference room's windows, they could see the continuing bustle of Kepler Station. Ships arrived and departed in a constant stream, carrying goods, ideas, and people between worlds that had never cooperated before the Council's collapse. "What's the current network membership count?" Elena asked. 437 worlds as of yesterday, Zara replied. About 60% of former Council territory, plus nearly 200 previously independent or uncontacted systems. Growth is actually accelerating as word spreads about the benefits of participation. Dr. Yithek activated a holographic display showing the galactic map. Blue markers indicated network members, green showed cooperative non-members, yellow marked neutral systems, and red indicated the few remaining authoritarian holdouts. "The pattern is remarkable," he noted. "Network membership creates regional stability that attracts neighboring systems. It's becoming self-reinforcing." Elena studied the map carefully. "What about Earth's role in all this? Are we still seen as the leaders of the network?" Zara considered the question thoughtfully. "That's perhaps the most interesting development. Humans are still respected as the founders and primary innovators, but the network has evolved beyond human leadership. It's become genuinely multilateral. Humans are influential because our contributions are valued, not because we claim authority." Which was always the goal, Elena reflected. Create something better than empire, then step back and let it grow naturally. Dr. Yithek's form shifted with what Elena recognized as deep satisfaction. "Your species has given the galaxy an extraordinary gift. You've shown us that the choice isn't between chaos and tyranny. There's a third option, voluntary civilization based on mutual benefit and respect." As their meeting concluded, Elena walked through the station's commercial districts, marveling at the diversity of beings working, trading, and socializing together. Children from a dozen different species played games that mixed traditional elements from their various cultures. Artists collaborated on works that would have been impossible under the Council's segregation policies. Scientists shared research freely, accelerating discoveries that benefited everyone. This was what humanity had envisioned when they walked away from the Council 6 months ago. Not the destruction of galactic civilization, but its transformation into something more inclusive, more innovative, and more humane. As the Prometheus departed Kepler Station, Elena watched through the viewscreen as the hub of the new galaxy continued its endless activity. Ships bearing the insignia of former enemies worked side by side. Species that had been oppressed for centuries now participated as equals in galactic affairs. The Council had been right about one thing. Humanity's withdrawal had indeed caused the galaxy to descend into chaos. But from that chaos had emerged something far better than the order they had destroyed. The galaxy had discovered that cooperation was stronger than control, that voluntary participation created better outcomes than forced compliance, and that diversity was a source of strength rather than division. Humanity had walked away from the Council, and in doing so, had given the galaxy the chance to walk toward something better. In the months and years that followed, the transformation would continue. Former Council species would adapt to their new roles as equals rather than rulers. Previously oppressed worlds would flourish with newfound freedom. New technologies would emerge from collaborative research that crossed species boundaries. And humanity, the species that had catalyzed this transformation by simply refusing to accept the unacceptable, would continue to contribute not as conquerors or rulers, but as partners in building a galaxy where every sapient being had the opportunity to reach their full potential. The old order had promised stability through control. The new galaxy had found something far more valuable: growth through freedom.